Big bank, you guys are too young. You don't. Anybody here over 50? Not a soul. You remember those big bank of lights? You were like this on your home videos. It's like, anyway. We get some new faces here. Welcome. Okay, let's go. Is that it? Okay.
Randy, you guys have been 154 sacks in the last 3 seasons total. Have you seen opposing offenses do anything different to try to slow down the pass rusher? What kind of different things do you have to face every week to keep getting sacks?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of people will adjust their protections based on what we do. We like to say that we have the ability to flip or switch what we do based on what they do. We have a lot of great coaches in our league, and the guys do a great job of adjusting to what we do, and then I believe our guys do a great job of adjusting to what they do, and it's a chess match through the whole game, and it's certainly a challenge because we got some fantastic offenses and some fantastic teams. I think some of the offensive coaches in the ACC are the best in the country, and so it's a real challenge to stay one step ahead of them. And when we don't, you guys certainly see it. But I like to think that we do a pretty good job of making the adjustments during a game, to make that happen.
Randy, 3 of your top linebackers out the door from last year. You brought a couple transfers in. I know a couple sophomores are coming up the pipeline too. Not that there's a competition, so to speak, but where do you feel that room stands right now, given how much that's actually left?
Well, to be totally clear, there's competition at every position. We don't go out there and say so-and-so is a starter. We go out there and say you're the first one on the field based on what you did last year. But what you did on the last play determines who the starter is for the next play. So it doesn't matter whether you're at linebacker, whether we return however many defensive linemen we return. There's no starters today as opposed to tomorrow. It'll change tomorrow based on what they did today. As far as linebackers go, to be clear, we only lose 2 positions because Sabase Dennis and Brandon George are back at Mike linebacker. So really 2 positions. We did lose 3 starters because we had 2 guys rotate to the field. And I believe we have some young guys who are stepping up. And then we have a couple of new guys that came in to fill those roles. So based on the first day, I'm excited about all of them.
As a follow-up with Servassier you talked about there, tell me about his leadership and how he's kind of stepping up to help the rest of that group come along.
Sure. Well, I would say he and Brandon George both are very experienced football players. And we're able to, number one, move those guys to different positions because we teach them to play all 3 positions. And number 2, those guys have sat down all summer, even all spring for some of the guys who have been here, and they've been teaching along with what we've been teaching. So the kids are in here every day, grinding, learning, watching tape, and so I'm very impressed with where they're at.
You got those 2 guys, and you got Eric and Brandon at the safety position behind that. So a lot of guys in the middle of the field that you're familiar with, that are familiar with you. Does that allow you guys to do more things? Because I know you guys like to play fast, aggressive, and just attack. But is there an extra complexity that you can bring in and say, hey guys, I trust you to make these calls and to do these things?
Sure. Well, I would say number 1, we talk a lot about risk and reward. And as you get to be a better football player, as you get to be more trustworthy, we give you more leeway to make plays. So sometimes it might be A is what we do, but if you can go B and make the play, do it. Now that's what practice is for, to learn when you can take that chance and make a play and when you cannot. And certainly guys like Eric and Brandon, who've been here a long time, Servassier, those guys get a little more leeway to be football players. And at the end of the day, the object is to make a play. And, in defenses that I've coached in the past, your job was to fill that gap. And the way I look at it, our job is to bring down the guy with the football. And so sometimes I would say we're a little more gray than we are black and white with our defense. And once in a while it hurts you, and then you got to learn from that, and you got to know when not to make that decision. But, at the end of the day, I'm not out there. And your experience, your ability, all factors into whether it's black and white or whether it's gray.
What does that mean, being more gray than black and white?
What does that mean?
Yeah.
That, like I just said, at the end of the day, places I've been, you are in charge of going to a gap. Your responsibility is black and white. Well, in the game of football, it's not a black and white game, in my opinion, in our opinion as defensive coaches. Sometimes you can go B instead of A and make a play, and you can make a big play. And so we give them the ability to learn, if that makes sense, during two-a-days. And so if you go and you make too many mistakes in trying to make a big play and you give up a big play, now we're getting back to being, hey, you have to go to that gap. Does that make sense? As you become the football player that can go make a play and you can go out there and actually make something happen and sometimes take a chance within the scheme of our defense, we want them to do that. And you know, our main responsibilities on defense are to go make big plays. When you make big plays on defense, you get to go across the hall and play for those guys. When you make a tackle, really, if you look at it, if you think of the top defenses that I think of, Georgia, Alabama, they never have the leading tackler in the country. Why? Because number one, they don't play as many snaps. Number two, if you're making a lot of tackles, that means you're playing a lot of plays. And so we want to go make tackles for loss. We want to go make sacks. We want to go make interceptions. So sometimes you have to go play gray a little bit, if that makes sense.
Randy, you've had a lot of talented guys on the defensive line, guys that are playing on Sundays.
Sure.
How does Kalijah sort of, how does he compare to some of those, or what are his strengths that allows him to be sort of the player that he is?
Well, Kalijah has great football awareness and great football sense. I believe not only does he understand our defense, but he has awareness for what offenses are doing. And so there's times when we talk about playing gray, Kalijah can sense what is coming based on film study, and Charlie does a great job, Charlie Partridge, of teaching those guys those little intricacies of offenses. And once in a while it hurts us, but 3 out of 4 times if we're making tackles for loss because we're making big plays, that's the bonus of it. And Kalijah has that great football sense, but he also has great quickness, which I think really lends to being able to be better at that.
You know, when Jerry mentioned the production you guys have had just in terms of getting a quarterback the last few years,
Sure.
is that, and it's not just like one guy, it's not like you have 2 guys, I mean, you've had a number of guys. Does that become like a calling card, do you think, of maybe of this program or this defense or this era of Pitt football? Just like, hey, regardless of who's up there in the front 3 or 4, like, we are coming to get you.
Sure. Well, they came out with a statistic, and I saw it somewhere on the internet. They called it Havoc defense, and we were not number 1 in the country. And our goal is to be the number 1 aggressive defense in the country. I believe they had a second in Havoc, which was tackles for loss, sacks, pressures, all of those things, and you have to go dig it out to figure it out. But as we looked at where we were last year, had we been number 1 in the country in Havoc defense, we believe that we would have been playing in the Final Four. And so that is our goal, to be the number 1 Havoc defense in the country. And I talk all the time about being the most aggressive defense in the country. It starts with me, and then all the things that I just talked about lend into us to be that kind of defense. And we go to take shots, and you guys know I've said it many times, we don't grade them down on missing tackles. Most people do. We don't grade them down on the missed tackles. We grade them down on the passive missed tackles. Because if you go and you miss a tackle, but the running back has to stop or the wideout has to stop and readjust, then we expect the other 10 people to get there. And if they don't, then that's on those guys. If we go up and we stop and we let the guy run around us, that would be a passive missed tackle, and that's not the way we want to play if we're going to be the most aggressive defense in the country, if that makes sense.
Does it give you any peace of mind knowing you have Eric and Brandon back there as that safety duo with their experience? And how do they complement each other? Like, how are they such a complementary safety?
Well, I would say when a guy has played with another guy, and these two guys in many ways are the quarterbacks of our secondary, of our defense as far as coverage calls and all of that, it's nice because it gives myself, our DB coaches, and our whole defense the ability to make adjustments on the fly. I mean, we might have one way that we're going to go into the game and play it. Within the third or fourth play, based on what we are defensively, we see a different offense. And that happens a lot early in games. And then we have to go to B, plan C, plan D. And the nice thing about having guys with this kind of experience is that they can go immediately, hey, if we get A, we want to be in B, C, or D. And so the flow is just a lot easier. When you have younger guys, less experienced, you have to be a little careful how far you go. And I would say having that level of experience, we're able to go C, D, and E as opposed to A and B, if that makes sense.
How well has MJ Devonshire progressed from last year to this year?
Well, I believe MJ is a starter for us right now. We at least he's fighting to be a starter. He's certainly got the ability. He's got great football sense, and he is a great athlete. And you know, if I remember back to the interception he had at the end in the overtime against who was it, North Carolina, right? The thing that you notice with him is not only did he intercept the pass on that play, but he also got down on the knee because we won the game. And a lot of guys with less experience, with less football sense, would have not done that. And so I think he's made tremendous strides, and I look for him to be very much playing a lot, but also competing to be the first guy out there.
Would you say corner is your most difficult position to play on the defense? Because you know you got to.
I would say they're all very difficult based on what we teach, but corner being on an island all day.
Yeah, your system specifically seems
But
like it's
there's nobody in the secondary who has an easy job, because there's many times with as many guys as we commit to stopping the run, a lot of times we're playing straight man-to-man. So I would say field corners also, Eric Hallett's position is probably right up there, but really all four positions are very difficult because a lot of times we're playing straight man.
Randy, last season you guys had some hiccups during the season.
Sure.
But you recovered and you played well, and I think the championship game you probably was won by the defense as much as it was by Kenny Pickett. What was it help that improve? What do you guys have to do to become a better defense through the course of the season?
Well, I would say the first thing we have to do is we have to eliminate mental errors, and then we have to tackle better. There are times when we miss tackles because of leverage, and so at the end of the day, I don't believe there's any magic pill. It's playing better football, getting off blocks, tackling better, and then not making mental errors. Just playing within the defense.
Was there much scheme change involved in those weeks after the Western Michigan game?
I don't know if
and the
it
other
was
games?
as much scheme as maybe our philosophy going into the game might be adjusting quicker to different things that teams are going to do to us.
without a quarterback like Kenny, a first-round pick, most prolific passer in school history. Do you think there's basically just no question about it that the defense will be relied on more to win these games than an offense that was scoring 41 points a game last year?
I think my job is to stop them, period. So is it going to be more important, less important? It's always important. So I don't think it'll make a bit of difference. I think our offense will not lose a stride, quite frankly. I think they're going to go up and down the field. I believe we're very strong on offense. We got so many guys back. Certainly Kenny was a great football player, but Kenny Pickett wasn't the only reason that we won the ACC championship. I believe that offense as a group is very strong. So do I believe that defensively we're still going to be relied on? We're relied on every day, every play, and if we're not, then I'm probably not doing the job I need to be doing. So
I'm sorry. Is there anyone that has a leg up on getting one of the outside linebacker spots, or both of them, or?
not after one day. We have 4 or 5 very good players, and I would say at the end of the day, we're going to rotate all those guys through the first couple weeks. I hope that we don't have a specific player who's a true starter. I hope, like last year, we had 2 starters to the field, and I hope we're to that point where we have that depth again. So between Bengali Kamara, between Shane, And let's see, who else do we have out there now? I mean, even Servassier Dennis may go out there and play a little bit. So we're going to rotate a lot of guys in there. And so, we'll see where it all shapes out. After one day, I would say they're all about even right now.
Would you feel comfortable rotating Servassier from position to position?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
He's played enough inside, and he's played outside throughout his career. But where we'll end up, because Brandon George is also an experienced returning linebacker. So, the best 3 guys will play. And at this point, we've got probably upwards of 6 or 7 guys that are rotating in there. Solomon Vault's another one.
I'm just curious, as a local guy, I cover a lot of high schools mostly for Post-Gazette here, and you mentioned MJ Devonshire. He was someone who was our Post-Gazette Player of the Year in high school like 3 years ago. Post-Gazette Player of the Year last year, for the first time ever, I believe, was a lineman, Sean Fitzsimmons. And what have you seen from him so far?
Sean is aggressive. He's the football player he was in high school. He is a bull in a china shop. He is far better athlete than I had anticipated him to be. He's far more agile. So not only is he big and physical up in there, but he also has the athletic ability to move sideline to sideline. He's doing fantastic. I think he's ahead of schedule for his age.
I know you're really deep on the defensive line. You got a bunch of upperclassmen that can play there, but do you expect him to challenge for playing time?
Oh, for sure, for sure. He'll be rotating, and we'll see where he goes. I'll know better here in a couple weeks.
I'm also curious because I'm a wrestling guy too, and I see Dylan Bennett from Montoursville. He went to state finals twice in wrestling there. I see him on the defensive line too. How's he been doing since he arrived?
Dylan's doing great. Now, he's not D-line, he'd be a linebacker.
Okay.
But he's doing great, and he's got good football sense. And
Like a middle linebacker, Mike?
yeah, and he will be behind the other the 2 starters right now.
Like a redshirt freshman?
Correct, but he is doing a great job. He'll probably anchor the scout team this year with the idea that, get his experience and go from there.
I had kind of a big picture question about defending an ACC title, and it has to be nice to not, judging from this group, I'm guessing you don't have to not have to worry about guys getting complacent. Like, it seems like this group is about the furthest thing from complacent, wanting to celebrate themselves.
Sure.
What does that say about Pitt's program, where you guys are at? To maintain that aggressive mindset.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, we expect to be best in every category, and whether we're second or 10th. We're not going to be satisfied until we're first. And we have such a large group. We have 8 seniors, but we really have 16 who could move on to the next level next year on defense. And so those guys are great leaders. They know from the start to the finish that we are going to do nothing but continue to be who we are. And we're going to shut out everything outside, whether we're 1 week we're the best thing since sliced bread, the next week we aren't, if you remember game 3. And, what we've learned from that, we're going to take to the Sure. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Can I ask one more question? Servassier was asked about the turnover hoop at the ACC kickoff, and he said that was your doing because you love wearing Jordans, but he's questioned your ability to dunk. So can you dunk?
I can dunk at that for sure, at that 7-foot one for sure. But at the end of the day, it really wasn't me. It was DeMar Hamlin who came up with it.
Okay.
I just got it to be a solid thing. But yeah, DeMar Hamlin actually came up with it, and when I go, I reverse dunk. So.